Hello, love. Welcome to Transmission Tuesdays here on the Libra Key. Messages of a transmissional, cosmic, galactic consciousness nature for the highest and the greatest good of the ELSH collective. Empaths, Lightworkers, Starseeds and Healers, awakened and awakening souls. Know that if this timely yet timeless message finds you, and or if you have found it, that there is something here for you. That is always the intention that I put into these messages. Family, thank you for being here. Sending you so much love wherever you are. And if you are new to this channel, new to this video, a very warm and loving welcome to you. This Transmission Tuesdays is going to be the beginning of a series on the astrological archetypes. And I am being guided to kind of tweak this a little bit based on how it started. So I'm just going to give a little preface here. The original request for this kind of archetypal look at astrological signs happened about a year ago, where I had mentioned something about Virgo in a particular video, and a very beautiful soul had requested that I expand upon that. And I had done that as a Wildcard Wednesdays message back then, where I would essentially, it was sort of like, it was wildcard. It was like whatever topic for the particular subject of that message, okay, and that video. Fast forward, and I've had requests to do the archetype for the astrological signs. And what Spirit and what I'm also feeling is this should be part of Transmission Tuesdays, because in exploring these archetypes, we are exploring cosmic consciousness, and we are exploring the planetary energies connected to these astrological signs. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it. The Venusian energies here for us. We're going to be asking a question at the end of this reading. I'm going to be popping some cards at the end of this reading. I am working with this beautiful big piece of rose quartz. All of these energies crystal-wise connected to the energy of Libra, Lapis Lazuli, working with this energy as well. And this beautiful quartz point. This reminds me very much of the discernment energy and the justice energy, the Lady Justice energy when it comes to Libra, okay? Now, I'm going to start by reading from Linda Goodman's Sun Signs, okay? This particular, it was these two paragraphs that when I first read about Libra, and disclaimer, as you all probably know and have a pretty good idea, I am a Libra sun, but I also have a stellium in Libra. I have 5 planets in Libra. And what's hilarious is that as a Libra, when I would read about Libra, when I was first getting into astrology, very young, like when I was like 11, 12, and I would read about like astrology in, you know, pop astrology magazines. Oh, Libra's like this. It's all like pastel colors and love and peace and all that stuff, which is true, okay? But I found that some of the ways that Libra was being described didn't really ping for me. And it wasn't until I got into the deacons of the signs and then started exploring astrology even more that I was like, okay, now it's all making sense, right? One of those steps in that journey was reading these first 2 paragraphs from Linda Goodman's Sun Signs, okay? Because I think, and she's absolutely hilarious, and I love the way that she writes, and love Linda Goodman, okay? Because she especially was a bridge at the time that she was writing, really introducing astrology to popular culture, but in a way that wasn't superficial at all, okay? She just had a knack for it. And I think she was an Aries, right? Yeah, you see, Libra, Aries, that whole thing. Okay, so I'm going to read you the first 2 paragraphs from How to Recognize a Libra, because I think that it summarizes this. There's a good way to sort of start, okay? as we look at some of the preconceived notions of what this archetype can be, okay? Librans hate to be rude, yet they'll straighten the crooked picture on your wall and snap off your blaring TV set. Librans love people, but they hate large crowds. Like gentle doves of peace, they go around mediating and patching up quarrels between others. Still, they enjoy a good argument themselves. They're good-natured and pleasant, but they can also be sulky, and they balk at taking orders. Librans are extremely intelligent. At the same time, they're incredibly naive and gullible. They'll talk your ear off, yet they're wonderfully good listeners. Librans are restless people, but they seldom rush or hurry. Are you completely confused? You're not alone. There's a frustrating inconsistency to this sun sign that puzzles the Librans themselves as much as it does others. Yes, 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 it's 11:11 on the clock as I say that. Okay, second paragraph. And this is the one that's really, and I've spoken about this before in some videos and messages that have come through, but I'm just going to read this section. Lots of people will tell you that Libra is all love and beauty and sweetness and light. That's fine as far as it goes, but it stops a little short of accuracy. It also stops short of Eugene O'Neill, who's a very well-known playwright. Check him out, because that guy was intense. Just because the sign is symbolized by the golden scales of justice, don't ever think that Librans are always perfectly balanced. It seems to be a logical deduction. After all, the purpose of scales is to balance. However, did you ever watch the balancing process on a pair of old-fashioned pharmaceutical scales? The ultimate goal is to get both sides even. But what happens? First one side is low, then the other, up and down, and they dip until there's perfect balance. Drop into a friendly neighborhood pharmacy and watch them in action. Okay. It is this process of balancing, this act of balancing, that archetypically Libra is all about. It is also very much connected to the energy of polarity and equilibrium, right? And funny enough, I'm also going to be referencing from this book, the Taschen astrology book, showing you some images from this as well for you to kind of get a feeling and also intuit and share how you perceive Libra, how you see the archetype, even share about whether you are a Libra sun, moon, rising. You've got lots of Libra in your chart, right? In terms of how you see this and interpret this, okay? So the chapter on Libra is called Imaginative Equilibrium in this particular book. And I find that a really interesting title to give, because it almost feels like we're constantly in this state of imaginative equilibrium, constantly in this state of integration. The energy of duality, the energy of light and shadow. And actually, as I talk through this, I'm just going to bring some of the images that I've chosen to kind of share here. This is one of the Justice cards that I absolutely love from the Light Seers Tarot, because it's directly speaking to this energy of polarity, this energy of light and dark, black and white, and the grayscale in between, the balancing point with this sword. This is the sword of truth. This is the sword, oftentimes I associate it with Archangel Michael. Archangel Michael is the archangel that is very much associated to Libra and the Libran energies. Okay, I'm going to bring in that Lapis now with this beautiful clear quartz point. Okay, this is the energy of discernment. This is the energy of being able to see both sides. And I think of that Joni Mitchell song. Oh my God, how does it go? I've looked at life from both sides now. Okay. That's why this confusion, okay, that Linda Goodman speaks to is a thing. But it's also actually not, right? Because Libra is able to hold, as an archetype, many different contrasting energies. And that is why in astrology, when we're talking about the dignities in astrology, in terms of where planets are placed in particular signs, the sun is in its fall in Libra. This takes the sort of, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but the centering of self in a particular situation or an energy out of the equation. That's why Libra is also represented as just the scales. It is the only sign in the astrological wheel that is an object. It's not a person and it's not an animal like all the other signs. And yes, it's often depicted as a woman. A lot of that has to do with the ancient interpretations, which are fascinating in and of themselves when it comes to how these archetypes are all kind of connected. But that often has to do with Virgo, or the energy of Astrea, or Themis in ancient Greek mythology, Lady Justice, essentially holding the scales. But it's also been interpreted as the scales being the claws of Scorpio. And so much of this is connected to the way that time of year, when we, from Momma Gaia's perspective, we begin to shift and change. And the sun is in its fall. It begins to essentially, metaphorically, die when it goes into Libra. It starts to wane, the way that we see the moon begin to wane as well. And I believe it was, I believe his name is Vic DeCara, or Vic DeCara. When I heard him talk about the sun and the fall equinox and the 7th house being connected to death, as opposed to what is traditionally been associated to Scorpio being connected to death, and there is still a connection there, it really did ping for me, because I always felt like, you know, the sun is essentially, the sun is in its fall in Libra. It is going down. It's going down in Libra. And this is where we begin to get into the darker part of the year, where we begin to go into the shadow work. We go into the slowing down, right, of energy. So it's all connected to this, right? It's connected to these energies of reintegration, balance, integration, all of that. Understanding, again, coming back to this sort of truth, coming back to the occult Christ, right? The work of Ted Andrews, how Archangel Michael is the archangel that is associated with the fall equinox, okay? And obviously I'm speaking here from a North American, Northern Hemisphere perspective, based on how I have experienced the waning of the sun. And don't forget that astrology is historically connected to that as well, okay? So there's this energy of oscillation. I'm going to get to that. There's this energy of a constant balance and this elusive, imaginary equilibrium. But I want to touch upon that from a consciousness point of view for a second, because Venus is also the ruler of Libra. And we are talking here about the ultimate in terms of divine femininity, right? The receptive quality of divine femininity, and also the divine feminine that is in contrast to millennia of living through a very masculine lens and masculine perspective. So this is where this imaginative equilibrium kind of energy or concept can come in, because we see this thing as being elusive. But what if we actually took the balancing act as the balance itself, as the equilibrium itself? It's not a still thing. It's constantly moving. It's constantly sort of working its way through things. And with Libra being an inanimate object, it's always about this kind of concept of a third perspective or another higher perspective, an objective perspective, right? Seeing things from that Lady Justice point of view. But it's also about coming back to the heart of the matter. And this is something that the Venusians have shown me before, and I'm going to get to an image with that as well, because there's a lot to cover here and a lot will kind of overlap. But it's so much about that being the balance, about coming back to this heart-centered balance. One of the flowers that is associated with Libra is the rose. And the Venusians have always shown this rose energy as being the heart to me. And I know in many other traditions, it's like that as well. When I think of the Rosicrucians, this is connected to that too. It's all about this coming back to center, the center being the balance point. Because when we look at a set of scales, there's always that fulcrum, that energy right in between the seesaw, between the oscillation. The energy that essentially is exploring the contrast, the energy that is moving back and forth between the light and the dark, moving back and forth between both ends of the spectrum, okay? The glyph of Libra is significant here. And on that note, I'm going to start kind of sharing some of these images. So this particular piece of art here, this artwork, is by Alejandra Luisa Leon, and it's called Libra from the Stars Divine. This is from an oracle deck. This is so cool. So the glyph of Libra, right here in the middle, which I absolutely love, between these two hearts and this beautiful rainbow energy, like the rainbow bridge. And I've always seen Libra as a bridge between polarity, as a bridge between different realms, as a bridge between understanding. This is an air sign, right? So we're working here with the energy of consciousness, of mental constructs, of conceptions, right? Also, to a certain degree, social constructs. Libran energy is very socially acute and socially aware in a very intuitive sense. And that is probably one of its superpowers in terms of being very socially intuitive. This is very different from an emotional, intuitive kind of energy. It's different. It's seeing things from a much broader perspective again, okay? Now, the glyph of Libra is significant, and I'm going to read you the description from, this is one of the first astrology books I have ever, and I have many. This is one of the first astrology books that I ever bought. The only astrology book you'll ever need. I got way more, but hey, I think this book is still in print and it's great. For me, it was a beautiful starting point to expand upon my astrological journey. This is by Joanna Martine Woolfolk. And the section where she speaks about the Libran glyph is really interesting. I have it written up here, okay? And I'll speak to this in a second and what this represents. So the pictograph represents here the scales, right? Or the scale, which is in perfect equilibrium, right? Perfect balance on either side. It's not going to one side, it's not going to the other. This was the ancient Egyptian symbol for the setting sun. Now this is connected to the fall of the sun. Again, when we get to the fall equinox, right? The setting of the sun. You could also say that as well, the setting of the sun. Very connected visually to sunsets, okay? This Libran energy, which was regarded as the doorway between two worlds. This glyph is a portal, and it's parallel to the portal of this part of the year that we move into, that Momma Gaia cycles into, okay? Hence its connection to death and then back to rebirth again. In symbolic terms, the glyph is a crescent moon connected to two straight lines resting above a third line. This represents emotion, the crescent moon, emotion, even though that's a little bigger than a crescent moon there, but you get the drift. This represents emotion bounded on either side by reason. The line below symbolizing partnership, and I would go as far as to say union and unification as well, or integration with this, okay? So there's very much a kind of, it's funny, I'm getting like a mind, body, spirit thing coming through with that as well, with this particular glyph, because of the three different kind of points. And there's always this thing with Libra about the third perspective, the higher perspective, it being scales, it being an inanimate object, okay? Now, I've always seen this as an omega, as a portal, as a keyhole. This omega is that ending of a cycle and the beginning of a new one again. It's going through this portal of the sun in its fall in Libra, as our days begin to get shorter, as we move into the darker part of the year, okay? And this integration of light and dark. So on that note, I am also going to show you a well-known, more occult or esoteric illustration called Libra. It's Jofra's Libra. I hope that I'm pronouncing that properly. From the Netherlands. This is from 1974. I'm going to read the caption to you first and then show it to you. A female figure thought to be Ma'at. And this is connected to Egyptian mythology, right? The feather and the heart being weighed on the scales in the afterlife. Again, connected to this energy of death, right? The Egyptian goddess of justice, or Hathor, the cow-headed fertility goddess, which is connected to Venus and the energies of the Venusians, holds the scale in balance with her male counterpart, Thoth, or Jehuti, right? Libra is the sign of partnership. Now take a look at this image, because there's a lot going on here. And I actively invite you to intuit and see what you feel from this as well. Because there's a lot. There's a lot. And this is where the heart of the matter comes back into play again. And this balancing of opposites, or integration of opposites, or simply being able to see things from a higher perspective, in unification, in duality. That checkerboard is such a big thing for me, because it's very, very symbolic, and it has there's so many things that you can intuit from that and take from that and get from that, right? It's light, it's dark, it's polarity, it's duality. It is seeing things from different perspectives and understanding perhaps how they can work together, right? It's strategy, it's that sword, it's discernment, but it's all about coming back to the heart of it, right? Very much connected to those Venusian energies, the moon, the sun, the reflection of light. And again, light being consciousness. So how are we integrating our consciousness? Really, really interesting. Really, really interesting with that. Now there's some more really beautiful pieces of, like, just some gorgeous works of art in this particular book. Too many to share almost, really. But I also really like this simple one from Brotherhood of Light, Libra, from C.C. Zane's Spiritual Astrology. This drawing is from 1935. And I love how it's just really simple and straightforward. With the glyph, Libra, I balance, and those scales. The energy of the scales. And what's interesting is they're showing me, the Venusians are showing me now how the scales can be looked at almost like you can take the energy of the Justice card, you can take the energy of just the scales themselves as a form of sacred geometry, or a symbol, I should say, and this glyph as a kind of sacred symbol or geometry, right? It feels more like, I'm getting the sacred geometry of the rose coming through for that, like the rose of Venus, to meditate upon, to really assist us in integration, assist us in finding balance. Getting a deeper understanding of this divine feminine energy when it comes to this energy of oscillation, and how sometimes it can be frowned upon or judged. And it's interesting that I bring that word in here, because judgment is also really connected to this Libran energy in the discernment way. And also not getting too lost in the opinions of others or in the social constructs that are dysfunctional to coming back to the heart of the matter. The Libran archetype brings tremendous awareness to this. and especially to the divine feminine energies, these heart-centered energies that for millennia have been very, subdued, judged, persecuted, okay? Even around this energy of oscillation, of going back and forth, of seeing things from different perspectives. This is where the whole indecision thing comes through with Libra, because we live in a culture that is very much about, you got to know what you got to know now. Like, make a decision now. Rushing, that hyper masculine energy. And in being quick in that way and, being forced to make a decision in that way. And this even goes for, it's funny, I don't know, I'm getting the energy even of like as highly sensitive people, how that's something that's really, really, it can be challenging, right? Where you're then judged for being, oh, you don't know what you want, or wishy-washy, right? Or going back and forth, you can never make up your mind. It's because this energy of deliberation, this energy of really weighing options, doesn't really, it's not super conducive to a culture that wants you to just sort of act without thinking. And remember that we're always working within spectrums here, right? So whenever we look at a particular astrological sign, it's really important to also bring into the picture its opposite, right? And Libra's opposite is Aries, and Aries is is all about the self. I am. Birth, right? This is where the wheel of the zodiac starts. This is where you could essentially say the journey of the sun and the self begins, right? With Aries. That is when we have the spring equinox, right? That is when the sun begins to shine even more brightly. And it's kind of interesting because Aries' perspective is very much about how do you see things from the vantage point of the self. And there's positive and negative to that. Just like in Libra, there's positive and negative to seeing things from everybody else's perspective. And bringing that into balance again, okay? This Justice card is what I love about that, because it's very much about an integration of light and dark, of shadow and light. This integration of duality, okay? Remember that you can have the same weight on either side of a scale, but the contents of what that looks like on either side can be very different and very contrasting. And that's always something that I keep in mind when it comes to Libran energy and balance and equilibrium, is that you can have things, they don't need to look the same on either side. They can look very different. And that's where the energy of polarity comes in. Okay, so I am going to also just sort of bring in the keys to the tarot here as well. Justice is the Libra card in the tarot. It is key 11. 11 is always a portal to me. It is the energy of walking through a gateway, walking through a portal, okay? Very much like we see in the glyph here of Libra. And it's the energy of the divine feminine. It's the energy of two, of relations, of relationship, you and the other, one and another, okay? And it's connected to the High Priestess. So it's connected to this energy of, again, intuition, higher consciousness, different perspectives, expanded consciousness, I should say, right? You know what I mean when I say higher consciousness. And then we've got this energy of the Empress, the energy of the three, of creation. And there's an interesting kind of contrast with that when it comes to this masculine and feminine play in the Libran archetype. There's the masculine energy that is very active, very cardinal. It is a cardinal sign. It is active in nature. It is, like Archangel Michael coming in with that sort of discernment, clarity. The Queen of Swords represents this very beautifully in the tarot. The energy of the Queen of Swords, and I should pull her out because It's the Queen of Swords that has this really beautiful, interesting blend of the masculine and the feminine. And oftentimes, I mean, she sits on a spectrum as well between her own femininity and masculinity, right? And she can often come across as being harsh or cutting, right? To the point. And that's that expression of truth, right? And just knowing things and seeing things from a higher perspective. You know, she sits very high up here on the throne that she's sitting on, and she's surrounded by the clouds. She's surrounded by this higher consciousness. So much about discernment in that particular card. Okay, on that note, I don't want to make this video too long, and I know that we may touch upon this again. This is just kind of a little bit that I wanted to share, expanding on some of the things connected to Libra and Libran consciousness, and a little food for thought for all of us, okay? Because we're always learning and we're always growing. And I think more than anything, these videos are here to spark our consciousness in general around these particular archetypes and how to see them perhaps a little differently, and also how they speak to us, So on that note, I'm going to ask the Venusians to bring through a message with regard to what we can bring more Libran consciousness to. Timely, yet timely messages I'm going to be asking through the energy oracle cards, Sandra and Taylor for these, and also going to pop some tarot from the Mystic Mondays deck as well. I know that they want to speak to certain things currently, but they're also showing me that this is universally as well, because there is a lot going on currently with regard to division consciousness that we can bring a lot more Libran consciousness to, right? In terms of seeing things from different perspectives. They want me to grab that one. Seeing things from that third perspective, from a higher point of view. They want me to just look at this. Okay. So we have the energy of the second chakra coming out here in reverse. I do read this deck in reverse. This is Archangel Ariel, the number 36, which is a 9. Okay. So what's interesting is what they're bringing through for this particular message in terms of Libran consciousness is us embracing these divine feminine energies of receiving messages, especially is what I'm hearing with regard to the divine feminine and this dance of oscillation, this dance of seeing the back and forth as being a dance. Understanding, and it's funny because the energy of water is obviously connected to the sacral chakra, and I'm getting a lot of that coming through with this in terms of the movement of water. And now they're showing me biophotons. Again, they're showing me light hitting water. This has come through before. The Venusians speak to this quite a bit. Remember that the energy of Venus is very much connected to water. And it's interesting because even though Libra is an air sign, ruled by Venus, Taurus also ruled by Venus and is an earth sign, this adds an element of water to that sign. Both of them is how they're showing it to me. Of this divine feminine energy of receptivity and being open to understanding, to compassion around different forms of consciousness. Now, obviously, deceit is at the bottom of the deck here. We got to understand that this oscillation isn't just going anywhere. It's not this energy. This is the number 25, the energy of going deeper, and the energy that reduces to a 7, the energy of going deeper. And 7 is very much a spiritual, a number connected to many different spiritual traditions, just like 12, right? We have a lot of these kind of, this emphasis on this number, this energy of going deeper and balancing your intuition with your intellect and understanding that just because we talk about looking at different forms of consciousness and different points of view, that doesn't mean we are deceived. Remember that justice is all about divine justice and truth and how we get there. Justice, what I'm hearing, is like a divining rod, and there's a reason to build our discernment when it comes to deceit in this particular way. On that note, they want me to pop from the tarot. So the energy of Libran consciousness is all about discernment. It's about truth. That sort of truth is not there coincidentally, right? Archangel Michael, the energy of the Ace of Swords, right? The energy of God's truth, Source's truth, right? That's the reason why the Justice card and this key in the tarot looks the way it does, right? The sword of truth, interestingly enough, what I'm hearing, balanced with the scales of justice. Balanced with the scales of justice, okay? And where do we get that truth? That truth is a higher truth, for lack of a better way of putting it, right? But you understand what I'm getting at. It's God's truth. It's Source's truth. Four of Cups in reverse. They want me to take the Two of Wands. Again, I always see this as an 11 and a portal. Always see this as a portal. And the Three of Pentacles in reverse. Okay, so, and the World at the bottom of the deck. Beautiful. Yeah. Okay. I'm hearing the scales of balance are shifting. This beautiful confirmation to be coming through. Okay, this portal energy is what they really want to emphasize here. And funny enough, the World card is a 3, okay? Goes back to this Empress energy, reflecting this Empress energy. Remember that the Judgment card, and this, oh my God. You know, it's like you start with this thing and then you're like, this is how it works. Really, I should have gotten all the key 2s out before I even started this, right? But this is how it's going. So the Judgment is also 20, right? It is key 20 in the tarot, and all of these are connected. The Judgment card, the Justice card, and the High Priestess. Now, that is a deeper thing to get into, and maybe that is something going forward that we will look at in the future. But it's really important to point that out here, because Judgment, Justice, and the High Priestess are all connected with regard to how that particular energy and those energies work and evolve, how they work together, okay? So, you know what's funny, the Lovers card just popped out here too, you know, again, this energy of like the 2, but I won't get into that. The 6 is connected to Venus as well, but that's a whole other thing. So the Judgment card is also connected to Justice, this energy of higher truths through the High Priestess, right? Justice and Judgment, all of it connected. And it goes back to this deceit at the bottom of the deck. And what did I say? The balance is shifting, okay? So the Venusians bringing that in. And of course, at a deeper level, if you know, you know, with everything that's going on in the world right now, and pay attention to things seemingly getting worse, okay? Just pay attention to that, all right? In terms of how it's being presented to us, because the balance is always at work. And this has come through before, but oftentimes things will appear to be, and deliberately being presented as being much worse than they are, much worse than they are. And don't get me wrong, there is some absolute horrendousness coming to the surface right now. It's always been happening. So the fact that it's coming to the surface right now is a reflection of this, right? This energy of balance, of justice. Okay, 2 of Wands right at the middle of the read here with the 3 of Pentacles and the 4 of Cups in reverse. So this is a very straightforward message of how we can bring Libran consciousness more to the fore in these moments of feeling like we're not working in synergy with a thing, a situation, a person, a place. And that divine intervention is there for us, okay? In the sense of this portal, of being more open to seeing different perspectives, to the vision, because the Two of Wands is a vision card, and it is fire. It is the energy of spirit, passion, spark, life force energy is how they're showing it to me, right? And how that energy can transmute our emotions, how that energy can transmute how we're seeing things in the world, right? Interestingly enough, the Three of Pentacles, right, when we see it upright, is very much a card of synergy, right? And look, it's a 3. So we got this energy of 3 coming through again in terms of the third perspective and working synergistically with people, right? Coming back into union again, seeing things from different perspectives, understanding things from different perspectives, right? That's how we get out of the energy of disillusionment, of feeling disillusioned, of thinking that things are more divided than they actually are. Because if there's one thing that Libra reminds us of, is that we actually have more in common than we think. And we can relate to each other a lot more than we think we can. And it's all about this shift in perspective, the vision, and how you're directing that life force energy, okay? The 3 and the 4, another 7 coming through here, the energy of going deeper. And the 7 and the 2, the energy of this cycle of the sun ending and the sun setting. I think I'm going to end it there. This is 41 on the counter as I say that. Believe me, when you get a Libra talking, it can be hard to get them to stop talking, okay? That energy in general. Thank you. Thank you for being here, for sharing your time and your energy with me in this place. Thank you to the Venusians for coming through for these beautiful messages. So grateful for you being here. Please share in the comments below. Thank you for all your comments, your shares, your likes, for each and every one of you that have subscribed. I'm sending you so much love wherever you are. In love and liberation, always.